This program is brought to you by the Reeves Law Firm, www.reevesfirm.com.
In the know.
Good evening, everyone.
In the know. Tony Reeves, fired. Following the news in any way, shape, or form. No shortage of things to talk about. What does it mean? What will it bring? Is this a reality we simply have to accept? Tony Reeves, fired. Tony Reeves. Let's go ahead and get started.
Good day, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Q&A Social Security Disability Today. Today, we're going to talk about how do I make sure that all of my medical records are in my file, or otherwise known as making sure my file is complete. I want to make one point abundantly clear. A lot of times people, when they apply for Social Security disability benefits, they feel that's really all they need to do is file the application and then walk away. You have an ongoing responsibility with your file to ensure that you assist the government in helping you to prove to them that you're disabled. So it's very important that you understand what your role is throughout the disability process so that you don't go in there thinking that all you have to do is apply, give them some names, and walk away. I don't want anyone to be insulted by what I'm telling you, but you'd be surprised how often this pops up. When you file your application, be prepared to give information as specifically as possible. First of all, be detailed. You want to make sure you let them know exactly who, what, when, where in terms of those treating sources that can support your claim for disability benefits. Make sure that you know what the address is. No, don't say over there around the corner of Himes and Kennedy Boulevard. You know, that doesn't help Social Security out. You want to give them the accurate address and phone number. Do not add time to your application because you decided to just give them the name of a source and let them have to figure that out on their own if that's exactly where you've gone. Let me be blunt when I say this, especially when you're going to doctors. There is a very good possibility, and I'm not trying to be insulting, that there may be doctors with the same last name as your treating doctor. So if you don't know the doctor's last name, don't put Dr. Smith or Patel or Johnson or Ramirez or something like that and have to force the government to have to figure out who you went to. You want to be as detailed as possible. And also document what was done by the providers. What kind of exams did they give you? What kind of procedures did they administer to you? What kind of medications? You want to give them as much information as possible so that they can get the information to develop your case in order to demonstrate that you're disabled. When you apply for disability benefits, there is a date that you indicated that you became disabled. It's what we call the onset date of disability. That's the date you need to focus on. So you want to focus on the date when you became disabled and focus on everything after that date. A lot of times people want to give medical evidence going all the way back in the day, but it covers periods of time when the person was working. So not trying to be disrespectful or anything, that's helpful. But it may not be necessary. And what do you mean by that? Well, because most people are like, well, that shows my condition developed itself or manifested itself. And then I turn to the person and I say, were you working then? Well, yeah. When you're applying for disability, you're telling the government when your disability got to a point where you could not work. Historical evidence may be helpful, but it's not always relevant because guess what? If you say you stopped working January 1, 2015, but your condition developed in January 1, 2000, but you work from 2000 to 2015, they're going to say, well, during that period of time, it didn't disable you. So all that historical evidence may be helpful, but it's not necessary because something happened on the date you say you became disabled that indicates that it was worse. So you want to focus on the period of time of the date you say you became disabled, the date your medical condition kept you from work going forward. People, it is your responsibility to update your file. What does that mean? Well, first of all, you want to know where your file is, meaning which office has your file for Social Security's purposes. Is it at the local Social Security office? Is it at the Disability Determination Services? Are they handling it? Is it the hearing office or is it the Appeals Council? Know where the information is. Social Security is not in the business of updating your file. If you told them that you went to Dr. J and then you went back to Dr. J afterwards, it's not their responsibility to contact Dr. J to see if you've been back. You need to tell them that you've been back. So not only do you need to tell them that you've been back, you need to provide them information about the source, and if you're concerned that they may not get that information in time, get those medical records and provide them to Social Security. Again, Social Security is not in the business of checking up to see if you went back to that doctor. They only go by the information that you provided to them at that time. So if you told them today you went last month and then you go to the doctor tomorrow, they're not going to get the records tomorrow unless you tell them that you're going tomorrow. This way they'll know that they need to get those records. So remember, part of your responsibility is to make sure your file is updated. They're not going to know unless you tell them. I cannot stress this enough. When you're applying for disability benefits, let your providers know. Inform your doctors that you're applying. Now, hospitals are a little different. They get, stuff all the time, but you want to make sure you inform your doctors that you're applying. Stay in contact with your sources to make sure that they're providing the records to Social Security. And more importantly, contact Social Security to make sure they received everything. Now, I'm not going to say anything disparaging because people are people. But in most situations, DDS, if you're at the local office level, will contact you if they're having difficulty getting medical records from your treating sources. But not always. That's not always the case. Also, if your case is at the hearing level of the appeals council, they may not necessarily tell you if they've tried to make contact with your treating sources or if they're having any problems. Your responsibility is to let them know that they have everything. And if you notice that they're having some problems, find out from them. Don't sit on the side and wait for somebody to call you to tell you that they haven't gotten them. Because what happens is that people get their decisions and they see those records missing and get angry that those records aren't there. Well, as opposed to getting angry, take a proactive approach. You provided to them those sources when you applied. Guess what? You wait a period of time, call them and say, hey, calling meaning Social Security, were you able to get those records? We're still waiting on them. Call the source and say, hey, I contacted Social Security. They said they're still waiting on records from you. Did you send them? Yes. Contact Social Security back. They said they sent those records. You should be getting them. If you haven't gotten them in the next couple of days, will you call me or do I need to call you? If they tell you, well, you may want to call us, well, then guess what? Mark your calendar and call them back. And some of you are going, man, that's a lot of work to do. That's a lot of work to do. But the reality is that if you don't do it, you risk the possibility that your records are not obtained. So you want to be proactive, not reactive. Now, here's what I like to call the good, the bad, and the ugly. Here are the understanding the pitfalls of your case. First of all, Social Security may try to get your records, but it's really up to your provider to provide them. Okay, so I say that to say, if Social Security requests records from your doctors, the reality is the doctors may not provide them. And it could be for a variety of reasons. They didn't get the request. They want a lot of money for the records to be provided. You owe a bill to them that they want to hold up on them before they release those records. It could be a variety of things. So a lot of times when people get angry because they're like, Social Security didn't get my records, it may not necessarily be their fault. It may be your provider didn't provide them. So before you start getting really upset about what Social Security did or did not get, ask yourself the question, did Social Security try to get them, or was it your provider who failed to provide them? Also, keep in mind, providers get requests for records all the time. So it is very possible they get backlogged. So that means if they get a medical records request and they're like a month or 2 months behind, well, guess what? It's very possible that those records are backlogged. So what does that mean for you? You might need to go in there and physically get those records. Now, I said this earlier, but keep in mind, Social Security or DDS is not always going to call you to let you know that they haven't received everything. So I cannot stress enough, don't get an attitude if you look at your decision from Social Security and it looks like they've missed something that is Social Security's fault. You need to be proactive about finding out if they have everything, so this way you're not surprised. And here is the biggest thing, and I know I put it here at the bottom, and I don't want you to take this the wrong way, and this is not meant to be disrespectful in any way, shape, or form. The harsh reality is your records may actually stink. And what do you mean by that? A lot of times people swear on their life that the medical records that they have in their file is so spectacular that Social Security should be able to approve it with not a problem. And you know what? That's great. But there is the reality that maybe your records are not as strong as you think they are. Most people I tell, have you had the opportunity to physically look at all of your medical records? And you'd be surprised the number of people who are like, Attorney Reeves, I haven't. Okay, well then if you don't know what's in your file, if you don't have an intimate knowledge as to what is in your file to know what it is helpful or what's not helpful, they could get everything and you still not be found disabled because there's evidence in your file that's either in conflict with something else or it's not as strong as you think it is. So keep that in the back of your mind. People, I cannot stress enough. You decided to put in an application for disability benefits, and I need you to understand, you cannot take the potted plant approach. You cannot just sit off to the side and just assume that all you have to do is apply for disability and call it a day and let them take it over from there. You bear the burden and the responsibility of proving that you are disabled. So you need to take every action to be proactive with your case, not reactive, because again, your case is in your hands. Don't just hand it off and think somebody else is going to handle it. Now, if you need help, contact a representative. There's two organizations that help, the National Organization of Social Security Claimants Representatives and the National Association of Disability Representatives. Both of those agencies, they have lawyer or non-lawyer referral services that can help you. Don't go it alone if you feel like this is too overwhelming. The point that I'm really trying to make with this video today is you bear the burden of proving you're disabled. So please don't sit off to the side and assume that once you apply, you can walk away and they can handle it on your own and your medical records just speak for themselves. Because there's a lot of moving pieces when you apply for disability, and you want to be proactive about ensuring that you do what you need to do to prove to Social Security you're disabled. Like I've said in prior videos, you don't want the government out there trying to figure it out. You want to prove it to the government, and you want to do whatever you need to do to help them make that determination in a proper format in your favor.